Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Finally, I'm excited to finally get the famous Keith Kareem Williams. How you doing, Keith?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm just gonna jump right into it. Tell everybody your name and where you're from.
All right, my name is Keith Kareem Williams, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Been here my whole life. But yeah, single dad, super author. I just started giving myself like credit
Good.
for what I be doing because I'm my own worst critic. So along the journey, I end up looking at myself like because I want to do so much that I'm always looking ahead and I'm starting to learn to take a minute, chill out, and give yourself some credit for what you've done. You know what I mean?
That's the advice
So
I have to give to myself. Slow down. I have a list of all these things I want to do. Now, so I want to ask you, I started doing Keeney's Corner because I wanted to give one small businesses, authors, entrepreneurs, just downright amazing people a place to speak a little bit about themselves. And two, I really only talk to people who I find to be just like, yes. So I'm always excited when I'm talking to people, especially people who I'm watching them grind. I see you on Facebook and I'm watching like, yes, 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 yes. So I met you about 2 or 3 years ago at a book event. I think that Sugar and Spice was hosting.
yes,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I bought a few of your books. And then you had a book that was coming out. This one. We're gonna talk
Oh,
about this. We're gonna talk about this.
we're gonna talk about that one.
We're gonna talk about this. So this was last March, right before the pandemic hit. So we were supposed to get
Yes,
together, right? And I got a bunch of copies for friends. We were supposed to get together, and bam, Corona shut us down. And then, like,
Corona
right, just took us all over the place. So I definitely wanted to talk to
over
you.
the place.
So my husband is a huge fan as well. So he gave me a few questions. So I'm going to get to his questions first. So his question was,
Okay.
how long did the process take from pen to publish for you?
It varies depending on which book you're talking about.
Mhm.
Now I'm at a point where I can really knock out like a big novel, 300 pages, 350 pages. I could do that in a few months. But when I first started, you kind of doing something on the side. You're not as sure of yourself as I am now. And also, I had a regular job, so I didn't need it to pay bills.
Right.
So you could kind of do it in your spare time. You know what I mean? So my first book, it took me a long time. My second book really took me a long time because there's a gap where 2004 I released my first. I didn't release my second book till 2010.
Wow.
Just because life,
Yep.
I didn't take care of my family. I'm more focused on paying bills. I write when I can. But since I put out that second book and I quit my job, I'm pretty fast. So I could move at a rate of pretty much about like 4 books a year.
When did you first start writing?
Ooh. Like writing for like with the intention to put out not like to put out novels.
No, just writing, period.
Writing period since I was a little kid. Since my mother taught me how to read, I was like 3, and she used to be on her lap with the because my mother never believed that they have like a certain age where they say, oh, kids can start reading. My mother never believed that. She's like, well, he talking,
He
right?
can read.
He recognizes stuff. Why he can't read? So she had the old school CJ run. This is spot, C spot, and I started from there. And then, you know, there wasn't. I always, I love to read also, but I always wanted to write my own little stories.
Okay.
And even at like family gatherings, when like we hang out for Thanksgiving and stuff, I'll tell us something that really happened. I'm not making anything up. But my mother always used to tell me, you don't see how everybody's like hanging on every word. It's just the way that I do it. Because I talk like how I write.
Okay.
So I think I'll, yeah.
So where do you get the inspiration behind your characters. Now, this book right here,
yeah, super personal.
an emotional roller coaster. And the whole time, you know what's so funny? The whole time I was reading this,
Yeah.
I was reading it as if I was hearing your voice speak it. Then I was
Right.
like, is this a biography that he don't want to tell us? Like, what is going on with this book? Tell me what's going on with this book.
That book is okay. That's fiction, kind of, sort of. But but I will say this: all of the emotion is real. The situations aren't exactly what happened, but that is probably the second most personal book I've ever read. So it's like one of my favorites because it was scary writing it, because as I was writing it, I couldn't figure out if what I was writing was making what was happening in my life happen, or if I was just recording what was going on. I couldn't, that's the first time I couldn't tell the difference. I was like, am I manifesting this because I'm putting it down on paper? You know what I mean? It was weird. I felt like a wizard, like, what? So then I even started trying to change stuff, like, well, let me make this have a better outcome. You know what I mean?
You know, I really felt this book because it's based here in New York. So on the subway, the weather, the things like that. And I was like, yep. Even when I think it was one setting was like November was cold, and I was like, yep. I was like, yeah, I'm cold. I'm like, yep.
Because that's what I want. I want, you know, sometimes, you know, like sometimes I do freelance work for authors, aspiring authors. You want help, and I give advice on their writing and stuff like that. And what I always try to tell them is, when I write, I want you to be able to, if like you're from here in New York, so you know what I'm talking about, right? But I also would hope that somebody from Nebraska,
right,
could read it and feel it the same way and understand what it's like to ride across the New York City subway, or to step outside when it's our fall weather and things like that. So those just little subtle things that I try to put in there to make sure that you really feel it and get lost in the book.
I did.
So I'm glad that you did.
And I wanted to slap one or two of the characters. I was like, are you serious?
Oh, always. Always. Me too.
So how do you prepare for those like, because each character, of course, had a different personality. How do you prepare for that? Do you base it on somebody you know, or like, how do you do that?
A lot of times, my characters are almost like gumbo. Like I take a lot of, some of them are, what's weird, okay, what's weird is that I've written about like people that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows me how disconnected we are, or maybe it's, it's how we see ourselves through a very specific lens. Because they'll read the book and not recognize themselves. And I'm like, oh, I went that one. Right? But sometimes what I try to do is I'll take the personalities of 2, 3 different people, things that they've done, and make one person. That way I don't have to tell the same story in 15 books.
Right.
I kind of just give you a little bit of all of this. I take all the spicy stuff, all the human stuff, and leave the rest.
So how many books have you published so far?
I think last count I was at 21 or 22.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm constantly, you know, I had a friend, she used to be, or she's in marketing, and she said to me, why don't you stop? I said, I can't, you can't, like, she wanted me to like stop and focus on like the first 10. And I'm like, I can't, like, what I'm going to do with all of this stuff? I can't, you know what I mean? And it's fine to me, because if you read whether you start with my first or my last or anyone in between, I would hope that you would fall in love with the work that it leads you to the other books.
Right.
So I'm gonna just keep writing. I have an idea book that right now, in terms of like plot, because every time a plot comes to me, I don't want to forget it.
Right.
So I write it down in the book, like the main point. This is what I want the book to be about. This is what happens, and all the important stuff. I think I'm up to 232 like ideas. What am I supposed to do with all of that?
Right. That is
So
so.
as long as I'm alive, it's books. Books is coming.
I have a few of your books I bought from you at that event that I'm definitely going to look into reading because I put those down to read this one first. So I'm definitely going
Right.
to get into those. So are you self-published or are you with a publishing company?
No, I'm self-published. I do everything independently. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll sign to a publisher, but it has to be one or two things. It's either the money is right,
Right.
where you have to be able to do way more for me than I could do for myself.
Yep.
Even if it might take me longer, if the money is about the same, then I might as well just keep the freedom and do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Or a publisher has to have such a massive audience that me being signed to them exposes me to so much that I can grow my audience that way. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. You see how hard I work, so you know I go hard for myself. So it's
and this is good quality. So I'm like, this was pretty good. I was looking at the paper, the pages, everything. Do you have an editor? Or do you edit yourself?
I have an editor that I would recommend her.
Mhm.
Carla MD. She's dope. She's edited some of my books before.
Okay.
But I move so fast and I'm so impatient that I end up editing it myself. To be honest. And I kind of trust my readers. Like, you know, I have relationships with my readers. Some of them that they're so cool. They'll say, "Hey, Keith, on page such and such, you know, you made a mistake. Oh, thanks." And it's mostly like typos. It's not egregious blunders. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is a typo. So because I'm self-published, I have the ability to go back, fix it, and then we good. So it's not a big deal. I don't think anybody reading my book could say, "Oh my goodness, this needs editing." No, it's little stuff. You know, I can live with it. You know what I meant.
Especially me as a teacher, I'm always ready. Like, wait a minute,
Right.
all the time, and it's
Right.
crazy because even in like some.
Yeah, and if you see
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
No. I was saying, and if you ever see anything, I was gonna say, and if you ever see anything in my work, I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not sensitive like that. Tell me, Keith, over here. I'm like, all right, I'll fix it. But go ahead. You say as a teacher.
No, I was gonna say as a teacher, I always have my red pen ready. Like, no, but
Right.
it was pretty good. I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. So as a writer and as an author, who has inspired you? Like, what writers and stuff do you like? Their work, things like that.
Since I started this, I've met a lot of like independent authors.
You're muted.
I am so inspired by a lot of their hustling. I learned from everybody. In terms of, but like, let's say more established authors.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to. I always love the classics. Because they're classics for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I study those and I kind of have an understanding of why they work. Why 50 years from now you can read them and they still resonate with people because there's a certain humanity that you put into the work. It's just like the first set of books I fell in love was like Tolkien with the Hobbit stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. I was a kid that read comic books. So it's hard for me to pinpoint a few, but I will say that I always tell people that Zora Neale Hurston and Ralph Ellison, they influenced my writing style early on because what I loved about Zora with a book like Their Eyes Were Watching God is she wrote a story about us unapologetically. You know what I mean? It was raw. You could tell like, yeah, this is really what it is. And authors at the time were against it. Like, no, don't write with, you know what I mean? Don't speak like this. See, what are you doing? But I love that, the authenticity of it. And then in terms of my usage of metaphors in my stories, I get that from Ralph Ellison. Because when I read Invisible Man, that was everything. So yeah, I have a lot of influences, but those two, I would say they're responsible for my first book. And then over time, I developed my own style. But I don't read any one particular genre. I read anything.
Okay.
I've read the newspaper and picked up and said, because everybody has a style. So I appreciate all of it.
I know you like different, you do different genres, right? Or what genre would you see
Absolutely.
more? Because I know I've seen like different ones. I'm like, okay, you can't put them here, you can't put them there. So if you do a little bit of something, right?
Yeah, because it's almost the one thing that I will say, in terms of style or genre that's consistent across the board is more often than not, I'll write a story that takes place in an urban setting in a city. Because it's just so much you could do with it, right? So that's really just the only common thread. But otherwise, from that, I'll write erotica. I've written romance. I've written paranormal. I've written paranormal that's urban, erotic, romance, and paranormal all in one. Just because I think when you start to become formulaic with your writing, it works for some people.
Right.
Me, I'm always afraid that you get bored or tired of what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, you ever pick up a book and it's even your favorite author and you're like, yeah, I like the book, but it's not much different from the last two that I read because they have kind of like a system, right? I don't like to do that. I want you to just see my name on the cover, and it doesn't matter what it is. You know that this is going to be hot. I'm going to read this. This is going to be good.
So other than writing, what else do you
Yes.
like to do? What else do you like to do? What else gets your blood flowing?
I love, wow, that's a lot. Some of it I'm not going to say because I don't know how, if your show is PG-13 or rated R, so let's leave that. But I love film. I always have.
Okay.
So I'm even a screenwriter. Like, a lot of people don't know, like, I've written a lot of screenplays. It's just, before Corona, I was actually casted for my first little independent movie.
Nice.
But the thing with filmmaking now is that I love it. I have a friend that he actually he's been doing it for like 10 years. And I'm so happy that he recognized that I have talent, because he doesn't have to tell me, Reem, I'm shooting such and such day, pull up. You know what I mean? Because I'm a novice. And so I love the process. I love doing it. And I just love art. I draw too. I draw, nice. I airbrush. I just don't have much time for it, because I would love to be able to like put out one book a year and it just do numbers so that I have time to do all the other stuff I like to do. Right. But I have to keep cranking out books. But I draw. I used to want to be a rapper. I'm pretty good too. Listen, I can battle your favorite rapper and give him problems. Because it's poetry, right? It's poetry. Sometimes I have a brother that's a musician, and sometimes I'll be in the studio with him and I'll sit in a corner and he was like, yo, bro, seriously? I'm like, I'm just playing around. But so I just love art and I love expression.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's just how I am. So yeah.
Here's a little, some people know, some people don't, but I have a degree in television production. I don't use it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I went to school for television.
Okay. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that, because now you know I'm oppressed now. All right, Z. I see you.
Yeah, and it was like so many people like, oh my. When my husband and I first started dating, we would go to movies, even with my kids, and I'm always like, the lighting is off for that, or it took 2 takes, or they didn't do this right, or the scrim is off, and they're like, oh my God, can you just watch the movie? There are times like even with Avatar, remember when that came out?
Yeah.
I had to go see that twice, because the first time I couldn't enjoy the movie without seeing how this was shot, how that, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I'm not even gonna tell you how many times I went to see Black Panther, okay? Because I was just so engulfed in how it was made.
Right. And I'm glad that you said that, because my brother, my brothers will sit down and we'll watch a movie, right? Like, even like whether it be a web series, like they'll bring a web series to me, like, watch this. And so I watch it and they'll be all excited and I'm like, what? And I start breaking down points at like, well, the writing, this is off, that's off, this, you know what I mean? So I have to kind of, like you said, I sometimes have to watch things 2, 3 times. So one time the first time I watch, I know I'm just gonna nitpick.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second time I watch it for what it is.
Yes.
And find a way to appreciate it. But you can't help it, because once you have the knowledge, you start to see, and it's important. It's important for me to do, because I do that when I read. There's established authors, New York Times bestsellers, that I pick their books up, and I still see things where I would have done it differently, where I think this was the wrong direction to go. And sometimes, somebody will put out something and a book or a film will flop, and I'll watch it and I'll know why it flopped. Because sometimes the people making the decisions, the higher ups, especially with film, the people making the decisions, it's always, they're always trying to, they think they have the audience figured out. They have a blanket belief in what they think people want. But in order for, like, say all these what you would call them, like the reboots of movies, the reason why they flop is because these people, it's less of a risk to them to say we're gonna reboot this, because they already know they have a built-in audience. But the problem is you guys didn't really study what made the first film or first series work. If you don't understand that, you can't reboot it. Because you'll lose the core audience and you won't get the new audience. The new audience doesn't care.
Yep. They just look at the numbers. How much money?
You look at the number. How much money? There you go. So,
because there was a movie, I don't want to say the name, but there was a movie that was a classic back in the day, and then they did a part 2, and I was like, why?
Why? Yeah. There are books that I've written that readers have asked me, would you do a sequel? We want more. Kind of not, because what it was is what it was intended to be. That's where it is. Love it. Cook up in your head what happens next. But I'm not going to tamper with that, because I didn't have it. Like, if I'm going to write a series, I know in my head in advance it's going to be a series.
Right.
But once I lay certain characters to rest, that's it. I'm not bringing you the ghost of so-and-so or the kid of so-and-so. Nah, we're not doing it. Not doing that.
So if you had the opportunity to turn one of your books into a movie, which one would you do?
Okay. To turn into a movie, I would love to do Cursed Immortals.
Okay.
Because it's fantasy, it's sci-fi, the characters look like us. Okay. It takes place in a familiar setting, and I just think that there's a space in the market for Black Panther is proof that there's a space for that type of movie.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And there's not enough of it. We get budgets to do slave movies. We get budgets to do street crime, right? We get budgets to do drug kingpins. We get budgets to do the racially charged stuff, because it's, it might be hot at the moment. Yep. But I need to see our kids to see us in those roles also, like Black Panther, where you have where this guy, he's not just a street level superhero like a Luke Cage. Because when we get superheroes, we always fighting gangs and drugs. I'm like, where's our Superman? Yep. Like, a black man can't save the world. What's good? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's why, right? We don't get that. Our superheroes are like low-level guys fighting street thugs. That's what, and I'm like, why is our world so limited and so small? You know what I mean? We can't have a Superman level character. We don't have gods that look like us or immortals that look like us. So this is why I would say that one in particular. You know what I mean? I just don't have the budget for it. Right now I'm working on Death in the City rather, turning that into a series, because that book it's almost like an anthology where I tell you a lot of different stories. Okay. And the gun in the book there's a gun that passes from hand to hand from each character to character. And I have creative ways to, so that one, it gives me the opportunity to tell a lot of different types of stories within that one story. So I'm working on that. So it's a lot of micro movies that make up one long series.
So that's what you do now, full time, right?
That's it. That's it. I'll be tempted sometimes, like, man, there's some parts of, when it gets slow,
Yeah.
but during the pandemic, I just want to thank a lot of people that still supported my work, bought my books. Because at first, book sales was, and then I think everybody watched everything they wanted to watch on Netflix and everything on Prime, right? And everything on Hulu. And then the book sales kind of picked up a little bit because it's like, I've seen everything. Let me read a book. But I'm really humble and grateful that I was able to kind of maintain through all of this. Because I'm not able to do things the way I used to when I could go out to events, where I could go outside, set my table up, and just sell my books.
Right.
So I got scared for a minute, like, what you gonna do, boy? But I'm too stubborn, and I'm so used to like doing things my way that it'd be hard. Not that I wouldn't. If I had to, I have to. You know what I mean?
Right.
Bills got to get paid. But if I could avoid it, I'll avoid it.
Did you take any classes like creative writing or any type of English literature, any type of classes that really help you with your writing?
Yes. When I went to City College on 135th in Amsterdam in Harlem for like 2 years. I did 2 years. I went in. I wanted to be an engineer. I went to Brooklyn Tech High School. I was supposed to be an aerospace engineer. I was
doing pants. You went to Brooklyn Tech. That ain't no easy school to get in.
Thank you. I was doing college algebra when I was like 12, 13.
Yeah, I believe it.
So that's what I wanted to do. But when time came, I would have to go to. I got accepted to Embry-Riddle in Florida scholarship, but I still would have to come with room and board. I didn't want to burden my mother with all that. She had enough that she had to take care of. So I graduated high school younger than I was supposed to. I think a year and a half or 2 years earlier. And my mother was like, "Look, just like you was a good, you ain't." In my neighborhood, if I ain't getting in trouble, that's like, yo, salute you. So my mom's just like, you know what? You pretty much stayed out of trouble. She's like, relax, just be a kid. You graduated early, so I took off like a year and was just chilling. And then my mother looked at me and said, "Hey, listen, all right, Tom, right? You going to school or you going? What we doing here?" So then I went and I signed up for City College. Went there and I took I went in undecided because that's not what I wanted. Although I used to win writing contests and I was always good at it. That's not necessarily. I never thought about doing it professionally like that, like to put out novels. Right. So when I went to City College, I went in undecided. I said, I'll figure it out. And I took a fiction workshop. And one of my professors, I hadn't said anything for like the first month and a half of class or 2 months. And he told us, we're not using textbooks. I'm not giving you tests. I'm just grading you on your classroom interaction and what you write and what you bring in. Now, I had moved out of my mother's house by then. I was 19. I moved out. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm going to school. I'm like, listen, you can't fail classes. This is not high school, right? Because if you fail a class in college, you got to pay for it.
Yep.
Right? I ain't going for free. So I said, all right. One night I went home and I started, when I got home, I think I took a day off from one of my jobs. And I started writing at 2:30 in the afternoon. I didn't finish till 2:30 in the morning. So I wrote 12 hours straight. I think I only got up just to go use the bathroom and come back. And the next time I had that class, I took what actually later on became the first 2 chapters of my first book. That's what I wrote that in that time period. I brought it into class. And what's so funny is that it was like it was meant to happen because usually, everybody had something to read. That day, nobody had written anything. And the professor was like, nobody? He said, well, we can't just sit here and look at each other for 45, 50 minutes. And then I raised my hand and he didn't even know my name. He said, what's it? Because I hadn't said a word. So what's your name? I said, all right, go ahead, Mr. Williams. The floor is yours. And I read those first 2 chapters and I could feel the energy in the room change as I read. Everybody was engaged. The parts that were sad, you could feel the room got heavy. The things that were comical or funny, they giggled, they laughed. And when I closed my notebook, the whole class took a breath. and said, "You've been sitting." I classmates said, "You've been sitting there quiet like that all this time." So after I took that class, he said to me, that professor, I know he passed away, Professor Leo Hamelian, an older white guy. He pulled me one side. He said, "Let me talk to you." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Do you pay for school?" I said, "Listen, I got to get out of here to get to my job. I have 2 jobs paying for school, you know?" He said to me, "You shouldn't be paying for school." So when I typed up those 2 chapters, I had to turn it in, typed them up, handed it in. He wrote on the paper, my mother got it somewhere. He wrote in red, "This is something that Spike Lee would be jealous of." Right? And I was like, "Wow, word, because Spike is like Spike from Brooklyn. Spike like one of my heroes. Like, you know what I mean?" So I'm like, for real. So after that, that's when it kind of got into my head that, and I used to run into, other students who had that workshop, and they used to ask me, "Did you finish that book? Because when you finish that, I'm buying that. Like, could you finish that?" And then I took, what happens, money caught up to me because I'm living on my own, working 2 jobs, I got bills. And I'm the type of guy, like, I'm not asking, I'm out. I'm not asking my moms for nothing. Not even going over there for dinner. I got it. So I said, you know what? Let me take a break. Let me take a semester off, save some money, and then go back without all this pressure and stress, right? And then, idle hands. I'm home. I'm a young guy. I got my own apartment. Meet my kid's mother. She ended up living with me. And when you put 2 young people living together with no adult supervision, no parents, and y'all grown, right? Here come my son, right? It ain't gonna take long. Here come my son. So now my priority became taking care of my family. I put school on hold. Then, I figured out how to, balance money, take care of her and my son, right? And then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go back to school. And then again, you got young people that's hot to try. Here come my daughter, right? But I'm honest with my kids, and I also told them, "Yo, listen, when I say these things, don't think you did anything, or that you did not sidetrack anything, right? If anything, circumstances put me on my path, because I know what it did is, now it's all right. I got kids, I got a whole family I got to take care of, right? She never had to go to like her family and ask for anything. We never borrowed anything from anybody. I handled it.
Right.
But I said to myself, you know what? Just because I'm not going back to school, what I was going to school for, right? I said, the professor already told me I'm dope, right? Right? I was winning writing contests without anybody teaching me how to write or telling me what to do, right? So I started doing research on print on demand and self-publishing, and I invested. After my daughter was born, the very next year, that tax return, I just invested in myself. Instead of buying furniture or car or rims, I said, "Yo, I'm just buying 500 copies of this book I just wrote."
Nice.
And I put it out there. So yeah, that's my journey. That's my path.
It was so good
That's
to
how.
finally get to talk to you. So how could I tell people to reach you? Do you have a website, email? Tell us how to reach you to get some of these books.
The easiest way to reach me is, well, my daughter's revamping my website now.
Okay.
Ain't it dope to have adult kids with talent? So she's doing over my website. Right? So I won't send y'all to the website yet, but you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. My name is at Reem After Dark, one word, REEM After Dark, all one word. You can find me on Facebook, Kareem Williams. Kareem Williams, on Facebook. My email is kkareemwilliams@gmail.com. And if you want to buy any of my books, you can either contact me directly through the email and ask and tell me what you want.
It's me.
Or
I'll reach you.
Go on, or you could go, or don't feel no ways if you go on Amazon and buy the book, because I get paid royalties when you buy my books, and it's good because then you increase my visibility to more sales that I make on there too. So when you get them from me, I give you a discount. I don't care. Go to Amazon too. It's all good. It doesn't matter.
Thank you so much, Keith. It was good.
Thank you for having me. And you're going to hear from me, Miss TV producer. I'm on you now. Let's get this money.
Okay. Good talking to you. And I'm going to definitely include your information with this interview. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Have a good night.
All right.
All right.
So thanks.
Bye-bye.